Hello friends, today I want to talk about dental caries and cavities and what is the healing mechanism besides the mechanism of going to the dentist and getting repeated fillings and root canals and stuff of that nature. So I will take a quasi-medicinal, quasi-Ayurvedic alternative healing technique analysis here, and we'll try to see what are the best ways to maintain the integrity of our teeth. And it's very important to know that the integrity of the tooth depends upon two things. One is the structure and the density of the tooth. So the structure is the way the tooth is aligned within the gum and the alveolar bone. And the density implies the mineral content in the enamel. So things like a wrong bite can cause damage to the tooth, and that's why people who have a lot of stress and biting issues, they might benefit from a bite guard. And similarly, when the density of the tooth is eroded, which we will talk about in detail, the tooth can develop cavities and which can be needed to be filled and then getting into root canals and tooth extraction and all that. So first let's understand the structure of the tooth. Three distinct layers are present. The outermost avascular acellular layer is called enamel, and it is composed of the mineral hydroxyapatite. So basically it's a combination of calcium, phosphate, oxide, and then there are trace minerals, things like fluoride and things like magnesium, manganese, iron, stuff like that. So basically 96% is the inorganic calcium hydroxyapatite and 4% is the organic material. Then the layer inside is the living layer called dentine, and dentine is the layer that is hard, not as hard as enamel, but it's still hard, and it is protected because this one can be sensitive. Below that is the layer called pulp, which carries the neurovascular bundle. I have put it here inside this mini socket, a red color. So that is carrying the blood vessels, the lymph, the dentine itself carries through dentine tubules the lymph, but this is basically the blood vessels that are carried by the pulp. And inflammation of the pulp is called pulpitis, and when it gets worse, you can have infection of the root causing periapical lucencies and dental abscesses, which means basically an infection of the root of the tooth requiring root canal. So the most common question to answer is whether we can arrest tooth decay. The short answer is yes, and the hopeless answer that you'll hear from the dentist is no. And the reason they give is that enamel cannot be formed. Enamel, all the enamel that we have already formed when the tooth structure stops growing, which is 3 years after eruption of the tooth. When the dentine is growing, the dentoblasts and enameloblasts are growing those cells. Once they are done growing, they are done growing. So in adults, we do not grow the enamel. However, we do this process of demineralization by our wrong food habits and remineralization, which is replenishing those minerals by the correct food habits. So all the dental problems are related to diet. Of course, some of it is hereditary and genetics, the way your tooth structure is, or the way of the saliva that is flowing in the mouth. If it's not there, Sjogren syndrome, dry mouth will basically cause more dental cavities. But for the most part, it's from defunct, deranged dietary habits. So let's first understand what maintains the integrity of mineralization of the enamel. The integrity of the mineralization of enamel is maintained by the balance of calcium and phosphorus. So you need the right amount of calcium and right amount of phosphorus. If there is too little calcium, you can get dental decays. If there is too much phosphorus, you can get gum inflammation, pyrias. So you have to have the delicate balance because gum and teeth have to work hand in hand. So the first thing to know is that our MVPs, minerals, vitamins, proteins, most valuable players, These are the most valuable players in maintaining mineralization of the layer of enamel. The enamel has hydroxyapatite, which is eroded by defunct, dirty, deranged, processed foods and foods which are in general causing demineralization. So those are the foods and the chemicals responsible, as you can see. And whenever we are eating these foods, the calcium phosphorus balance is disturbed. The calcium phosphorus balance is most commonly disturbed by blood sugar fluctuations. That's why the blood sugar is the most important paramount thing in controlling the integrity of the enamel and preventing decays. So that's why you should not be eating sugars all days, candies all days, which everybody knows. But what people don't know is that the sugar itself doesn't cause the enamel breakdown. The acid itself does not cause the enamel breakdown. That was the theory of Dr. Miller, the bacterial sugar acid theory, which has been challenged by Dr. Shart's theory, which is of enzyme proteolysis chelation theory. So those are the two main theories. But basically, as long as you have a structurally intact tooth that is dense with minerals, it has integrity, and no matter what you eat, if the tooth is very strong, it's going to resist breakdown because it's very healthy. So first, when you have dental cavities, the first thing you have to know is what to avoid. You have to avoid blood sugar fluctuations, a sudden change in sugars, and that's why the short-acting things like sucrose, fructose, white sugars, refined sugars, all of them that are sweeteners themselves are bad. The second one is something called phytic acid. Phytic acid is the chemical that is naturally present in food grains, legumes, nuts and seeds. So all those four, they are highly nourishing food items, but they contain phytic acid. Phytic acid blocks the absorption of minerals, what we call a chelation agent. Just like as in lead poisoning, you have EDTA, EDTA goes in and it blocks and attaches to the lead, and that's how it's excreted out of the body. Similarly, phytic acid blocks the absorption of heavy metals and metals in general. So things like iron, magnesium, manganese, copper, all these are vital trace minerals that are required to maintain the hydroxyapatite. But when you eat the grains, it does not allow the phytic acid in them, does not allow the minerals which we are eating anyways to get absorbed and attached to the hydroxyapatite. So that's why the hydroxyapatite enamel loses all the minerals and demineralization continues, the cavity formation continues, and then you attack the dentine, the pulp, the abscess, root canal, all that process. So as long as you don't have phytic acid, now phytic acid can be reduced by soaking the grains, by sprouting the grains in water, because then there is enzymatic activation and something called phytase, Phytase. Phytase converts, it's like a catalase, enzyme that converts the phytic acid into phosphorus. So suddenly that is something which is super bad. Phytic acid becomes good, readily bioavailable phosphorus, which can be absorbed by the body, and that's why the phosphorus can promote healing of the gums and the tooth. So that's how you get rid of phytic acid. Partly, not totally. The total removal, if you have bad cavities, is to get rid of the grains. And by grains, I mean wheat, rice, oat, barley. Buckwheat and quinoa are pseudo grains, so they might not have as much phytic acid as phytic acid is present in these natural grains. The third chemical is called lecithins, saponins, tannins. They are also present in large quantities in grains, but also lecithins are present in beans, the seeds and the nuts. So that's another reason that you have to eat these things in moderation, and when you're having bad cavities, you have to take a break from the grains, legumes, beans, seeds, nuts. Cut them out totally. The last one is calcitriol. Calcitriol is a form of vitamin D that is found in preponderance in the nightshade family. The nightshade family means potatoes, not sweet potatoes, just the white potatoes. So potatoes, peppers, and eggplants, those are very rich. Tomatoes, very rich in calcitriol, which increases the absorption of calcium in the gut. So more calcium, less phosphorus. They're always trying to balance each other, calcium and phosphorus. So more absorption of calcium. So to balance and buffer out the calcium, we leach out the phosphorus from the bones and the teeth, and that's how the bones get osteoporosis, the teeth gets cavities. So very important to not consume too much of tomatoes, potatoes, bell peppers, eggplants if you are having dental cavities. Now, one thing for sure, if you are not able to get rid of these, I think even a bigger culprit is processed foods. Foods which are packaged, having additives, fillers. Those things have chemicals which the body has not ecologically, evolutionarily seen over many years, and that's why when we consume those, it breaks the balance, the calcium phosphorus homeostasis that is maintained by the parotid gland secreting the saliva. The saliva has a buffet of trace minerals, vitamins. So whatever is depleted in the enamel, it can be absorbed and replenished. The cavities can be removed. But once you eat these sweeteners, additives, MSGs, all these chemicals that are found in granola bars, that are found in ready-to-take food, canned food, especially. Fried foods, any food that is altered from its natural state in which it was growing in the soil, those things will shut down the hypothalamus posterior pituitary cycle. So the parotid hormones releasing factor won't release the parotid hormones. So the saliva is not naturally going to be rich in those trace minerals, either because they have been chelated through the phytic acid pathway, or they're not being released by the body to support this because of the derangement in the cycles. That's why evolutionarily wise we have not been exposed to this, the body has not learned yet, and that's why we are suffering through dental caries and osteoporosis. So my friend, now you know that the biggest enemy is the blood sugar fluctuations, which is blocking the calcium phosphorus balance, and the phytic acid, which is blocking the trace mineral absorption, which is required for the integrity of the hydroxyapatite of the enamel. Now once you know that, you have to replenish the minerals. That happens through MVP. So minerals, you have to have a mineral rich diet. But for the minerals to be absorbed, the major minerals, of course, calcium, phosphorus. So a lot of people will eat the meatha tuna or calcium carbonate, because that helps to replenish your calcium. Very good source. Also helps with the joint pain, a vat problem, right? Because think about Ayurvedically. What is tuna? Tuna or calcium is kapha, because it's basically helps to stick together. Whether you're thinking about the ancient buildings where they were sticking together, or whether you are thinking of the body where the calcium carbonate is sticking together, hydroxyapatite, calcium chloride, sticking together, all the cells forming an integrity of the enamel. So that kapha quality is provided by the tuna. That's why the number one mineral you can eat is tuna for dental cavities as well as arthritis, any vat problem, because kapha is the antidote to the vat. So you have to get your minerals, but not only calcium carbonate through the lime, edible lime or tuna, you also have to get your fluoride in the right quantity. So a lot of sea salts, people will rinse with the sea salts because they are naturally rich in all your trace minerals, things like copper, iron, manganese, magnesium. All four are very vital besides calcium and phosphorus to replenish the hydroxyapatite. So you want to provide the body with all the required elements, including zinc, because they will act as cofactors to combine with the proteins or the enzymes to reactivate the posterior pituitary the parotid hormone producing factors. Now, after that is vitamins. For vitamins, you have to remember fat soluble vitamins A, D, E, K are important. And of course, you have to also think of vitamin C, because that is required as a connective tissue formation of gums, things like basically amla, tridosh, it is helpful in amla. Now, vitamins are fat soluble, so anything that is rich in vitamin A, things like carrots and squash, rich in vitamin D, all the dairy products. Now, dairy products deserve special attention because lots of vegetarians have qualms about consuming dairy, things like cow's milk is for the cow only and not for us. That's true. But you have to take certain quantities, especially if you have a very strong vegan lifestyle predominant in grains and nightshades. You are going to have a preponderance of cavities due to the calcium phosphorus imbalance created by the phytic acid. So you have to counteract that with the combination of dairy. Dairy has, now what kind of dairy? It's what is typically recommended in Nagel's book is grass-fed, raw, organic dairy products. So things like butter. Butter is the most better. The yellower the butter, the better, because that is higher in the content of the fat soluble vitamins. Similarly, you have to think of what is called fat soluble activator X, FSAX, which is basically K2, vitamin K2. Basically, that is why they found in certain Swedish people as well as the aborigines of Australia, they did not develop dental cavities because there was some sort of symbiosis with the nature. So they were like the Swedish people in the Alps, they were near the glacial hills, they're living and raising the cows, and they are very sustainable farming, and they are drinking the cow's milk, and there was something about the sun shining, the glacier water melting, that created this symbiosis. Just like in Gita it said, Annat bhavanti bhutani parjanyad ansambhavaya gyat bhavati parjanya yagya karma samudbhava. There is some, the anna or the grain. See how beautiful the anna is. But the anna itself can become a problem if it is having phytic acid, especially the way genetically modified we have made it. I'll talk about the detoxification of phytic acid and other elements in another video, but basically this video is dedicated to understanding remineralization to get rid of the cavities. So A, D, E, K, and no supplements, my friend. I'm not talking about supplements. All natural fruits and vegetables only. Those should be your sources, and dairy for dental cavities. If you don't have much dental cavities, I'm okay with you. If you're lactose intolerant, I'm okay with that. But do know that these things can cause dental cavities. So if you're trying to treat it, have grass-fed butter and things like kefir and the buttermilk, which is basically yogurt, which you can eat, but yogurt which has been basically centrifuged. So that can create the buttermilk. That's very beautiful for healing of the cavities. The third thing is proteins. Now proteins, some people will argue animal proteins, bone broth and stuff like that. I'm not a big fan because they have other detrimental effects. So my source is basically plant proteins. So like things like moong dal, which are great, and they are basically helping to stabilize the sugar. The blood sugar fluctuations is what creates the calcium phosphorus balance destruction. So once the proteins have stabilized the blood sugars, the remineralization can happen because the saliva has the appropriate minerals which are not being chelated. Remember, when there is phytic acid, it is sticking to the enamel, it is preventing the absorption of the minerals. In the belly, it's preventing the absorption of minerals, and that's why you have these micronutrient deficiencies which are masquerading as fatigue, and we are like, it's chronic fatigue syndrome, but basically leaky gut syndrome. But basically those are problems of impaired absorption of micronutrients, at least in part, which has to be fixed through the correct intake of minerals, vitamins and proteins. Now, that's why the best sources to counteract cavities are grass-fed raw dairy. Now, if you cannot take raw pasteurized, you can, but it's not as good, especially since you know that pasteurization is going to kill those vitamins and enzymes that are there that are naturally good for us. But yeah, you have to make sure that you're not getting botulism. So weigh your balance and know where your milk is coming from, if it is fresh or not. But basically raw cheese, raw butter, stuff of that nature does help the cavities. But you have to make sure it's not infected, as I said. Vegetables, the best source. Everywhere you will hear critique about dairy, meat, fruits, eggs, fish, but never you will hear a critique about vegetables. If there's one thing that I have realized through my understanding of medicine is that vegetables are no harm category of food. So the more you consume the vegetables, the better it is. It can be your staple soup, it can be your sambar, whatever way you are taking it. The vegetables, things like cabbage, cauliflower, things like kale and Brussels, these things are naturally rich in chemicals that are helping us stabilize back the minerals and vitamins. So lots of vitamins are there. Of course, green leafy vegetables have iron, so that's another good source. But you should not combine them with things which are causing erosion or chelation like phytic acid. The third is sour fruits. Things like green apples are good. Things like in moderation though, because too much can cause damage. Amla is good because basically they are going to replenish the vitamin C and help to establish the structural integrity of the tooth. So my friends, in short, if you have cavities, these can be healed. If you have filled your cavities, they still can be healed. If you are in root canal stage where the pulp has periapical lucencies and there's infection of the pulp, irreversible pulpitis, then you might be recommended root canal. Weigh your options, benefits and risks, but of course it's worth a try of 6 weeks of dairy-free, nut, seeds, legume-free, nightshade-free diet, which is having a preponderance of butter, preponderance of green leafy vegetables, cabbage, cauliflower, and fruits, because that is one way of building your replenishing your minerals, vitamins, and proteins into the enamel so that the hydroxyapatite structure is intact. Hope you like this video. Please feel free to leave your comments below. Thank you.